Some events were different than others. It had to do with the interaction of the earth with different things. But this event in particular was related to more of a catastrophic flood, and it's always called that, the Great Deluge. Now, I don't believe it was based on rain entirely. I think it was based on like a tsunami. Because look at Eridu's got seashells on top of it. Persian Gulf is right there.
Yes.
It makes more sense that we had tectonic movements and enormous amounts of water. Now, where are we in that region? If you go look at a map, we have the Black Sea right above it, and we have the Persian Gulf right below it, and then the Mediterranean on the other side. If you were to get a massive influx of water, all three of those water bodies would flood.
So I just type in, can I do Black Sea? Is that good enough for you?
And then just zoom out.
Yeah.
So here we are. Here's Iraq, and here's Iraq right there. I can't talk and point at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And then here's Eastern Turkey. Now notice it's surrounded by massive inland lakes and different things like that. I think that's why that region talks about the flood so much. Because I think what we saw is that
the lakes are the result of the flood.
Combination of a lot of different things. But we're talking about what it states is that there was so much water that's why there was 45 feet of sediment on Shuruppak. Because if you go across an arid land with a massive event like this, that arid land is not going to have a lot of vegetation, and it's going to pull all its material with it. It's called sedimentation. Okay? And so that's what we're talking about here is that so Enki tells him how he has to build this craft that is the only way that they're going to survive. And he tells him he has to survive. He tells him that it's like critical for humanity.
Yeah, but he's also like giving him the keys ahead of time as to how to.
But if it wasn't up to him,
needs.
Enlil, his half brother, the eagle, he's the serpent. He wanted all of humanity wiped out.
Have you? Now I'm getting mixed up in my head as to what we talked about off camera versus on camera. So just because we're on camera, I want to make sure. Have you gone through the eagle serpent thing today on camera?
No, not with you.
Not on camera.
No.
All right, so can you do that now? If you're going to say that.
Okay. We won't go too far, but because we got to get back to this, we Julian just scratched the surface.
And what part did we leave off to?
The end of the Adrahasis.
End of the Adrahasis. Okay, go ahead on the eagle serpent.
I do love how talk about rabbit holes we're going down. One of the things that I did get known for in my last book, The Stage of Time, not the one that I'm releasing with Billy Carson, Epic of Humanity, but right before, and I did include some of that in there, but my previous book called The Stage of Time, one of the core concepts in there I talk about a lot is that I realized that there seemed to be a competition with civilizations all throughout history with certain symbolism. And the symbolism seemed to be shared, that it goes all the way back to these Anuna gods, because they seem to represent themselves with very specific symbols. Now, I thought it was fascinating because remember I showed you that mural where they're passing the knowledge of the...
Yes.
There's other murals that depict them, but with an eagle head.
Well, there was an eagle on the top of
No,
it,
but yeah, but this is different, with an eagle head. Like their mentality.
Yes.
And what they were passing wasn't the same thing. I've come to the conclusion that what they were passing, because they were depicting that, they never do anything by accident. They were depicting the knowledge of war and about how to create a different kind of civilization. Because what we find out is that Enlil had a son named Ninurta. Ninurta is the same person who became Nimrod in the Bible and is also the same individual that became the Byzantine eagle of the Roman Empire. There are these powerful influences we seem to be able to trace around the world of these specific mentalities, and it can't be a random coincidence because there ended up being this almost war against the two. And we know that especially with the Americas. Now, in the Americas, I want everybody to wrap their head around to think that there was a much older version of those civilizations there than we're taught. Like, for instance, the Aztec that were practicing blood sacrifice and the Maya that were doing all that, that's not part of the group I'm talking about. That was, again, a later iteration of those regions that had no one guiding them and sort of went on like a chaotic place evidence shows that they were in extreme drought for like 500 years, and they were getting to such extreme aspects that they were sacrificing people because they didn't know what to do. They still had the knowledge that the gods played a role in in the world and them, but they didn't understand, so they started like freaking out because they were all dying out, and so they started sacrificing like 1,000 people a week. I'm not even kidding. It was horrible. They didn't know what to do. But what historians don't tell you is that and I'm not saying this was justified at all, but they were in such an extreme drought that their maize crops, corn, were all failing, and they had nothing to eat. So they were trying. Anyway, that's a long rant, but I have to always say that because whenever I talk about the cultures of the Americas, everybody's always like, well, how can they be so good if they were doing all that? And that's what I need to like lay down. Is that the original Maya, the original Olmec, the original pre-Aztec, the Toltec, the ones who created Teotihuacan, Tenochtitlan, created Chichen Itza, those are part of an ancient story that directly relates back to Sumer. And the idea is that there were these great sages, and it gets back to the story of the Dogon. There were these great sages.
One in Africa and Mali, we talked about it already.
That are described as traveling like around the world and creating civilizations. But those original sages were part of that Enki side with the knowledge of creating temples and higher consciousness. But the other side with Enlil and Ninurta, they didn't find any value in that. They didn't want that to be part of any of our structure of us. And that's where this competition began. Is how do you rule humanity? Do you rule humanity through an iron fist and being a war empire and disciplined? Or do you rule humanity through like ancient temples and being creative and like showing all those aspects? And that was what this great division became, because
left and right side of the brain,
right? And that's what it is. The eagle represents the left side of the brain mentality, and the serpent and dragon represent the right. And the right brain has always been associated with the divine feminine and creation. Always.
So, and that's what's interesting there, because the serpent, like, I'm very good friends with Paul Rosalie. Love him. Paul, you do amazing work. I don't fuck with snakes, though, right? Like, that guy fucking loves snakes and everything.
Not real snakes, though.
I understand, but, like, you know where my head goes.
Okay.
I think serpent, I think literally, devilish shit, right?
Yeah.
What you seem to be saying is that it's the other way around.
They ended up inverting almost every symbol after around the Holy Roman Empire period. That's where I've traced it. Is that people don't know is that the Roman Empire used to be a non-monotheistic civilization, meaning that they didn't believe in a single god. That's called monotheistic religion. Romans used to believe in the planets being gods, and they used to worship them. Okay, and they believed in like more of the old ways, blah, blah, blah. But the point was that when the Roman Empire was collapsing, there was a man named Constantine. And Constantine ended up having this brilliant idea where they would restructure the Roman Empire. In where? Istanbul, Turkey.
Son of a bitch. Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.